The Halifax Mooseheads just had an incredible comeback against the Cape Breton Screaming Eagles to take a 2-0 series lead in the opening round of QMJHL playoffs. I'll be recapping and breaking down that game tonight on the channel. Then towards the end of the video, I'm also going to do a primer on QMJHL and CHL playoffs. So if that's something you're confused about, make sure you stick around until the end. For those who don't know, on this channel, I cover my local CHL team, the Halifax Mooseheads. They're having their second best season ever. I wasn't actually able to go to this game. If you want to see some of my experiences in the past, I'll link a video up above. I'm going to try to get to the next home game. But with that being said, let's start the coverage. As mentioned, this is game 2 of a best of 7 series. The Mooseheads won the first game pretty decisively 4-1 against Cape Breton, but there were definitely some concerns. For one, Cape Breton was fairly dominant in shots early on, and we'd see that again in this game. And the Halifax Mooseheads had probably the worst first period I've seen since I started covering the team. Not only would it be 2-0 by the end of the period, but the Mooseheads were just getting outworked. Cape Breton was getting shots, they were picking off passes, it was just total domination, and their captain Ivan netted a natural hat trick to take an early stranglehold on the game. Ivan's first goal would come on a beautiful shot after a nice feed to the slot. The second goal about a minute later would be very similar, and he'd get the third at the beginning of the second period. The turning point was really halfway through the second, and again, second game where the Mooseheads have started off slow, it almost feels like they recognize that they're by far the more skilled team. I mean, they were running the Q's top 3 scorers on the same line at one point, but in the playoffs, weakness and complacency is going to be taken advantage of. Evan Fournier would finally score one from the slot about halfway through the second, and notice this damn guy who kept standing up in front of the camera. This was so annoying, especially in overtime where the Mooseheads had 2 breakaways and you couldn't see anything. The camera operators, tell this guy to sit down. There are notices when you buy seats in this section. Anyway, the Mooseheads would really turn the shot differential around. I believe they were like 30-20 or 19 at one point. Josh Lawrence would end up collecting a loose puck in front of the net, would snipe it top corner to make it 3-2 with 6 minutes left. Then the boys would tie it up as a shot from the circle snuck through with a minute left, bringing us to overtime, although the Mooseheads did have one great opportunity near the end of the third. There was a bit of controversy here as it did go off the player's foot. However, we've talked about this a million times in the NHL. Simply turning your foot, that's not a kicking motion. That's a redirection, which is okay within the rules. A kicking motion is more like you're pushing your foot through the puck. Think about kicking a ball. Anyway, the Mooseheads would absolutely dominate over time. They had a couple of breakaways. There were some missed calls on the team too, which was very frustrating. There was a goal review after the Mooseheads potted one, but only after the goaltender was ran into, albeit after the Mooseheads player was tripped. That was eventually, after a long review, ruled no goal. I thought that was probably the right call. Mooseheads fans were frustrated, however, because last year during the playoffs, there was a somewhat similar goal which ended up going against the Moose. That would be in their longest ever game. It was elimination. It would go to almost 4 overtimes. But anyway, the Mooseheads would find the back of the net in this one about halfway through 1 overtime. It would end up getting a review for some reason, but this time the goal stood and it was well deserved because the Mooseheads dominated, I think, the second half of regulation, then really all of overtime. But yeah, probably a good win for the team mentally, and the fans were just wild. The Mooseheads have obviously sold out both games now for the playoffs. The atmosphere looks unreal. Really hope to go to the next one. But let's briefly talk about the CHL and QMJHL playoffs. Again, for those who aren't familiar, the CHL has 3 sub-leagues. The Q is one of them. The QMJHL competes for what was previously known as the President's Cup, but what is now the Gilles Courteau Trophy. I don't love the name. Anyway, it's a lot like the NHL. 4 rounds, each best of 7. The higher seed gets 2 home, 3 away, then 2 back home, so I'll only see the Mooseheads play again this round if the series goes to at least 6 games. The playoffs are divided by conference, and there's reseeding after the first round. It gets a little bit different as we get towards the semis because they do highest team in the West against lowest team in the East and vice versa. Then the final is obviously the winner of the semis. The semis and finals also changes the travel format to the NHL's rather than the NBA's, so 2 home, 2 away, then 1-1-1. The winner of the QMJHL, OHL, and WHL playoffs go to the Memorial Cup alongside the host team, the Kamloops Blazers. From there, it's a round robin format where each team plays every other team once. Then there's round robin standings. The number 1 team goes directly to the championship game. The 4th team is eliminated, and the 2nd and 3rd team play to see who goes against the first place team for the championship. Hope that makes sense, guys, and I hope you enjoyed this video. I really want to bring some on the ground coverage for the next game. The Mooseheads are guaranteed at least one more. Worst case scenario, if they lose the next 4, that's one more home game. I think they'll be able to close this round out against Cape Breton, which would likely see them playing Moncton in the next round, which would be a really fun matchup. But that's all for today. See you soon.